Kraven the Hunter, the latest and perhaps final entry into Sony's Spider-Man-less universe, opened this weekend to a disappointing $11 million total, a franchise low. In the wake of this fumble, just the most recent in a long string, many a Sony insider have come out of the woodwork to spill the tea, resulting in the internet being ablaze with claims that the studio is finally pulling the plug on this universe. But not so fast. While it does sound like Sony will stop making spin-offs without Spider-Man, the studio remains, quote, deeply invested in projects that include the marquee character and his many variations, including the Spider-Man Noir series that is in production in partnership with Amazon. Anyone want to make sense of the tangled web they have weaved?
Do I want to? No. Will I try to? Sure. I have to appreciate the optics and timeliness of this, especially coming off the last story. So while we have one studio doubling down on its, villain movies without their hero characters, we have Sony, which has been famous for that, finally throwing in the towel. And I did see Kraven this weekend. No surprise to anyone, I'm sure. But I have to provide some context here. So $11 million against a $110 million budget is bad.
Yeah. All caps.
The only other movie it's worse than Madam Web, which I have to say. Critically, I will say the fact that people are saying this is worse than Madam Web, it's not. It's a better movie than Madam Web, but I think people are taking greater issue with it because it is the last dying breath of the Sonyverse, and I think people's reception to Madam Web just made them not interested in this at all. But I think what this one had going for it with the trailer, with the R rating, with Aaron Taylor Johnson, people were like, maybe they got something here. And how many times have I don't think I've been the one to say that, but I feel like that's been said on the show before. Maybe they got something here.
Stop looking at me.
Hey, let Sony cook.
Stop looking directly at me.
Matt said, let Sony cook.
So, yeah, let them cook.
All that being said, this is not a good movie. But it's not as bad as Madam Web. It has all the classic hallmarks of a terrible Sony movie. The egregious ADR, the lines of dialogue that make zero sense whatsoever. You have a character, like, I kid you not, a Oscar-winning performer says these lines of dialogue. My grandma died a few years back. I haven't seen her since. You haven't seen your grandma since she died? Yeah, I hope so. It's like nobody that was looking at the script, nobody that read these lines had any issue with that whatsoever. So, I do say, if you've got the expendable income, if you've got an AMC list or something like that, go see Kraven. It won't be any harm, any foul. The universe is obviously on its way out, so you don't have to feel the burden of responsibility to contributing to the success of this thing. But I do think you want to be a part of the conversation. But let me bring it back to the comparison I was trying to make. So $11 million. The only other comic book movie I can kind of relate that to is New Mutants, which did $4 million better than that in the height of the pandemic, while theaters were still shuttered. This New Mutants movie that got pushed back and pushed back and pushed back did better than Kraven. So that just, it just goes to show the writing was on the wall. People are done with Sony. You fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, shame on me. But at this point,
fool me 3 times, it's Morbin time.
There you go. There you go. So, those are some of my insights as somebody that has seen the movie. I'll be honest. I was never, somebody that was dead set against the Sony movies, but they were never all that great. So I am kind of glad that they have decided to finally put this to an end and actually focus their efforts and attention where it should be. But they're not going to sell the rights, and Sony's still going to be Sony. So, just take all of this with. Take it all in stride, because while this is the end of the quote-unquote Sonyverse, I don't think it is the end of Sony's mishandling of the character, but we will see.
No, I mean, it's the biggest comic book character in the world. Like, they are not selling the rights to Spider-Man to Disney. It's just not happening, because really we're looking at the ones that it's easy to dunk on. Kraven, Morbius, definitely Madam Web. Like, these movies did not do well. They were not well received. They did not make money. In 2 of the 3 cases, they did not even make their money back that it cost to put them into the theater. But still, you have to also look at the other side of the coin for Sony. You have to look at the fact that the 3 Venom movies combined made $1.8 billion. The first one did most of that heavy lifting, but still, that's a financial success. The third Venom movie, which was not super well received, was a financial success. Overseas, it did a lot better than it did domestically. And so you can look at that. You can hang your hat on that. You also can hang your hat on the animated Spider-Verse movies, which are having a great field day, especially in part 2 did, and now we've got part 3 coming up, and it's probably delayed forever, but eventually it's going to come out, and that's a huge property for Sony. And then the crown jewel of it is that they are still involved with Marvel Studios. They share custody of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. They get to share in the profits of these movies, which have all made $1 billion, and in this character. And so there's no reason to jump that ship. If you're Sony, you probably don't want to keep doubling down on the villain movies that don't feature Spider-Man and have no plans for Spider-Man, because the audiences have spoken. We don't want that. Most people do not want that. They want a Spider-Man in these films, or at least the promise that there will be a Spider-Man. We have always speculated on this show, like, why are they not bringing in Spider-Man? Like, we've asked that question multiple times, and I think we've even mused on the idea of, well, there's probably something in a contract somewhere that if there's a Tom Holland out there and he's got the suit on, that they can't do it, and that's why they're so weird about it, and Madam Web, and they're not saying the name, and we're like, say the name, Peter Parker. Like, what are you doing? And so the Variety article where a lot of this information came from for this story, it confirms that the opposite was true. Sony had full rights to use Spider-Man anytime they wanted. They could have brought in a new character. They could have brought in Tom Holland. They could have done any of that, but they just didn't think that audiences would like that. They thought that they could hang their hat on the anti-heroes, on the villains, and that people would think it was weird if Tom Holland was hopping across the multiverse or whatever and popping up into their movies and then also popping up into the Marvel movies, that they would take issue with that. And then they didn't like the idea of hiring a new Spider-Man, and that was a fumble, obviously, because people, people don't want this. We've seen, I talked about the Penguin earlier, and the Penguin did not have great viewership numbers. We talk about it. You may think it did because we talk about it because we loved it. Like, we thought it was great and we watched it all, but not a lot of people watched it because, again, it's a Batman villain with no Batman. It's going to get a lot of awards, and so it's going to be a success. It was very well received, but still, that's if you're going to do it, that's how you do it. You make a series, you put the series on your streaming service, you draw it out, and you tell the story that way. Throwing these villain movies into the theaters, it's just not it. Like, it's not something that we're actively asking for. And I think Sony is kind of learning this lesson the hard way. But again, they're going to refocus, and Spider-Man's not done. If anything, Spider-Man's just getting started, and there will be maybe like more Venom because that's been their successful property. But yeah, there's still more to come with Sony. It might just not be this universe that we've been sort of mashing together in some form over the last few years.
Yeah, you just can't tell me that a CEO or whatever, a VP at Sony, isn't saying, maybe it's not so bad to let Marvel help us make these Spider-Man movies, because to your point, $1 billion is $1 billion, and even if you split that down the middle, that's $500 million, and that's a hell of a lot better than $11 million. So it's kind of like, just do the thing, make the contracts, play in the sandbox with each other, and make freaking good Spider-Man movies, because they will make you so much money. Like, it's not rocket science, but it's taken them this long and this many terrible movies to figure it out. I don't know. I mean, I know the business decision is we own the character, we want to do the thing, but it's not good business at the end of the day.
It's also like, you own this character, and as a team, like a creative team, whoever this, like, not the creatives, but like the production team, the executive producers who are putting these movies together and making these movies, who is making these decisions?
Right.
That is, we have all these characters, we have this whole, stable of characters, and we are making bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And it's just a real bummer to see. It's a real bummer to see. And it kind of contributes, because a lot of people don't really understand the blending between Marvel Studios. I mean, literally in Madam Web, the actresses didn't know they weren't in a Marvel Studios movie. Like,
right.
It is brand confusion. And like, as much as we've talked about the MCU with all their post-credit scenes that went nowhere, think about people who don't understand the difference and how many more Sony movies have had post-credit sequences that didn't go anywhere. And it's just continuing to add to the like compounding problem that Marvel's already having. I think it's been really bad for Marvel to have this out there and sort of being a confusing, competitor. And like poor Vulture, they just pulled him into the other universe.
He's stranded
in there with Jared Leto.
Stranded over there with Morbius. Like I was really excited to see Vulture come back and his interactions in prison with Geiger or whatever. What's that character's
Gargan?
name?
Mac Gargan, Scorpion.
Mac Gargan.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you. I was like, Geiger. That's not right. But no, yeah, I was really excited for that. And then he's just in the other universe now. And if they ever bring him back to the, like, do they even have to explain it? Like if Vulture decides,
absolutely not.
Right.
You
That's
just
what I'm
bring
saying.
him
Like,
back. You don't say a word.
Whatever room he comes out of, just before he comes out of it, there's just like a flash in that room, okay, he's back. He's just back in the universe now. I guess he's still in prison.
He could just like look around like, what? Okay, whatever. And that's the rewrite
That
right
was
there.
a weird
Just
dream.
moving on.
Yeah. Yes.
The Hollywood is such a...
It's the Tombs verse. Y'all know like the Tommy Westphall universe where he looks into the snow globe. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Sorry.
Yeah, vaguely. What's that from?
This is way too. It's from
Is it Twilight Zone?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was I don't even remember what show it was on. It was on a soap opera. And it ended the entire series, I think St. Elsewhere maybe, and the entire series ended with Tommy Westphall, a mentally challenged young man looking into a snow globe, and the entire story was happening in the snow globe inside of Tommy Westphall's head.
Right.
But because of all the crossovers, you can find a map because they crossed over with a bunch of other soap operas, and then those soap operas crossed over with a lot of other shows and other like universes. And there's a map you can find online that's like every universe that exists in Tommy Westphall's head. It's very funny.
Oh my god!
So that's what the Sonyverse is. It's Adrian Toomes having like a thought.
Exactly.
That's the whole Sonyverse.
If Sony would let Marvel troll them, like doing something like that, and then having it be like Asgard is blown up, so I guess it can't. But like in somebody's vault and like putting it on a shelf and being like, and just like walking away. Like, that would be so funny. Like, here's the Sonyverse.
Yes. There's the Sonyverse. Just have the never formed Sinister Six just having a little battle in a snow globe on the back in the background of a shot. Yeah.
It was always like the Sinister 3, the Sinister 4. Like we could never get there. We just never closed the deal. Hollywood's kind of like one of those battleships that just like turns really slowly. And I think we also have to reframe this whole thing by saying, look, they got lulled into a false sense of security. The first Venom movie, I just looked it up because I knew it was a lot, but the first Venom movie worldwide made $856 million. So I think that was what they started with. They put this guy into this role, and yeah, they had success, right? Like they had that's a huge success for a movie. Tom Holland wasn't in it. Spider-Man was never mentioned. And they said, hey, like, yeah, this is what the people want. So the idea that it's taken a few movies to figure out that maybe that's not quite the case, that's just kind of how Hollywood operates, right? It's like the next thing is the next thing, right? So we're going to make another Venom. Okay, well, it did okay. All right, well, then now we're going to do Morbius. We're going to do Kraven. We're going to do Madam Web. And then all of a sudden you start to see the steam kind of leave the, the engine. And that's when we start to have the conversation about like maybe in hindsight, this wasn't it. But again, you have to kind of back it up and talk about, okay, a month after Venom came out, it seemed like, all right, well, that is the key, right? Like we should make more of these because why we didn't need Spider-Man, and look at what happened, right? We're just kind of riding the coattails of Marvel, and we're loosely connecting. Are they not? And that's fine, and it can work. And then it just started getting so weird, and they started trying to really move away from that and be like, this is over here, this is over here, this is over here, and everybody just got cynical and was out on the whole thing, But if you're Sony, I'm looking at your next live action character that you have on the table that you need to bring to the screen, and that's Miles Morales. And I'm saying, I'm calling up Kevin Feige, and I'm like, hey, remember what we did with Tom Holland? let's do it again. Like let me in the room. Like, let's make Miles Morales movies together. Let's put him in the MCU. Let's put him with Tom Holland. That's the conversation I'm having right now. If I'm ahead at Sony.
Yeah, 1,000%.
We're probably reaching the threshold for takes on this story, much less Jay Scotty puns. But while you were giving your take there, Jay, I couldn't help but have the thought. Sony, much like DC's Bane, they got a taste of that venom, and they've been chasing that high ever since. Thank you.
I thought you were going to do the clay.
Thursday.
I thought you were going to do the clay thing again, but
I'll be here till Thursday. And then the Superman trailer drops, and I'm out.
Yes.
I'm going to look up.
Don't look at your phone, look up. Don't look at this, look up. Sorry. I do appreciate the optimism, but I had to appreciate the irony as well.
That's funny.